And for me, given the importance of relationships and how this industry really works on the ground, it's about empowering people. It's about finding the tools and building tools that help people. I like to call it the Iron Man suit. All right. I want our team to be able to throw on their suit. I want somebody in the suit.
Yeah.
I don't want this thing flying around unsupervised, right? But the idea that we can make you smarter, faster, stronger, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be impactful.
Welcome back again to Strong Conversations, Real Stories with leaders, innovators, and changemakers here in the building industry. I am Sam Marcoux, as always, and he's still here, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Jackson, the CEO of Builders FirstSource, sitting on the couch. We're not letting him leave quite yet. We're into part 2. We are now talking about Peter Jackson as CEO. If you haven't listened to part 1, I highly encourage you to go back, listen to part 1, hear everything that made Peter Jackson who he is today, the John Wick story, all that fun stuff. Throwing hot dogs at Foxborough. What was one, before we get into this, because there's a lot to talk about, but I do need to talk about the fact that I think I glossed over that you were slinging hot dogs and you had to have the voice, you had to have the pitch.
Got to call it out, man.
So what was the pitch? What was like a hot dog, come get your hot dogs? What were you saying?
It was, can I do it?
Yeah.
Hot dogs, yeah.
I'd buy a hot dog.
You got to get them, right? You got to snap their head around, because otherwise they'll ignore you. Everybody's yelling.
Somebody get me $5. I need a hot dog right now. That sold a hot dog right there.
That was fun.
That was good, and it snapped right at the end, right on the hair. And it's
you gotta get them.
So
set the hook.
Were you were you the best at it, or did you have
I made money?
You made money.
I hustled though, right?
Yeah.
There were some guys who were there to watch the game. And so, there's a crew of us.
So take your hot dog.
And some of them would be like, staring at the field. And I was like, no, man, I got to make my beer money. So I was hustling.
I love it. So one of the things that just happened here, and I know we talked about this on our pre-call, but it just happened in between part 1 and part 2 as we're sitting here recording, is somebody came into the studio to introduce themselves to you and talk to you, give them their card to you, and to talk about a future opportunity. And I'm just sitting here watching that. I wasn't even here. I was here, but I wasn't. I was invisible. They weren't here for me. They were here for you. And we talked about this, but as CEO, there's so many people that want to talk to you and meet you, and just this is part of your daily life now.
Yeah, it is. But just a little subtle difference there is that, while I think I'm a likable guy, they are here to meet the CEO of Builders FirstSource. Right. Peter Jackson happens to be wearing that outfit, so there's a difference in my mind, at least. I think it's a little more grounding when you remember that, and it's a responsibility. Right.
It is a responsibility. And one of the things that you talked about as CEO, because you've been in the role here now for a little while, is just the demands on your time in general, right? Because of the title and because of who you guys are in our industry, right? I mean, you guys are hugely influential and hugely impactful every single day. How do you manage that much information that's demanded from you? And everyone wants to tell you stuff, right? Everyone always says, hey, I got this, or check this out. I mean, it's just constant, right? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's it's something you have to be intentional with. I think the reality is most people are really excited or have positive intent or are trying to make sure that I know what I need to know. And there's a lot that I do need to know. The challenge is that there's literally more of that to do than there are minutes in my day. And so the sanity aspect of managing my calendar ruthlessly, but still leaving time for the ad hoc or, bump into each other moments to share information, blocking time for one-on-one meetings and interpersonal time, while at the same time not filling the calendar so desperately that you don't have room to think for a minute about what's going on. So I have a couple different strategies that I use, but it's with a lot of intention.
I mean, you have to thread that needle, because like you said, if you don't do it, if you say, look, this is too rigid, I just need to, then things fall off. Things don't get done. Time gets away from you.
Yep.
But if you do it too rigid and it's too strenuous, then it feels like the stress has got to go way too high. Like, I have this next meeting, I have this next thing, I got to do this, and this.
Yeah, the burnout is absolutely a real threat.
So you mentioned you got a couple different strategies. Could you talk us through what those strategies are?
Yeah, I mean, all right. So this probably going to sound like a lot because when we were talking about it before, I'm like, it really does sound like a lot, but it works for me. I know everybody has different approaches, but when I go throughout my day, I've got a little notebook. My daughter bought me this little leather thing I can stick paper into for Christmas, and I keep notes in my meetings. What's going on, stuff that makes an impression on me, but most importantly, it gets a little box if it's something I got to follow up on.
Okay.
So that's sort of my running creation of to-dos and thinking about, all right, what should I be working on next? How do I address that thing? But that list gets pretty long.
Right.
That book gets pretty full. So I have to move that stuff. So I take all those boxes and I put them in Microsoft To Do. So I've got, 1,800 things over the years from, I need to buy my wife's birthday gift to, I need to, think about the multi-year planning strategy update for 2027, right? All that stuff is in there. And it allows me to sort of think about the next steps, break it down, and then I get to the action stage. And that's where kind of every day I have a routine that I go through. I got sort of my personal side. So in the morning, I'll write what I'm grateful for and some of my affirmations. But then I sit down and I write out my day's calendar and I pick my priorities. And that's probably the most impactful thing for me, is really consciously making that decision about what are the 3 things that matter most today.
Yeah.
There'll be some other things on the list, of course, 'cause some days are busier than others, but that clarity to start with the priorities and the things that are really going to make a difference, that's probably the critical thing for me in terms of managing all that information flow, because you just you have to prioritize. You got to be ruthless.
Yeah, and you said it sounds like a lot. I disagree with you respectfully. You break that down, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I don't nearly have as much information coming towards me as you do. But I remember you telling me that, and Nate Johnson and I got on the phone afterwards, like, maybe we should be doing this. Like, this makes a lot of sense to me. But the daily affirmations, I mean, that's captivating to me. That's when you sit down. You told me you sit down every day. It's about 5 minutes, right? And this is just figuring out what's going on kind of holistically, right? Why am I stressed? Why am I happy? What's going on in my personal life? Have I checked in with my family? All of those things, maybe even outside of work. I mean, it's connected to work, but it's kind of adjacent to it, right? And just sort of checking in with yourself and making sure that you're ready to go.
Yeah. I'm a believer, man. You bring your whole self to work, right? I am who I am, and I need to make sure I remind myself who that is some days, right? We get caught up in the BS, in the stress, in the conflict or whatever. Those minutes every day to say, hey, these are the three things I'm really grateful for. To remember to be grateful. I got a lot of great things in my life. I had a wonderful family. I had a great job. I work in a great industry. But if I don't stop and think about it, you get a little, well, that thing didn't go right.
Yeah.
Or, gosh, it's, whatever, rainy today, whatever it is, right? That's an important one for me. Some of those grounding things, I've had some really cool experiences in my life, being part of situations where I learned to think a little bit differently about both myself and how I interact with the world. I had this great guy I got to know, Steve Sherwood. I used to call him the guru. He coached me up on some things, and so I write some of the things that he told me in that journal every day as that reminder. But like you said, one of the critical ones is just observing my emotions. What's been going on for the last kind of 24 hours? Where am I right now?
Yeah.
That basic premise of name it to tame it. If I don't know that I'm super stressed out, I'm going to bite somebody's head off and then look up and then, now I got cleanup on aisle 3.
Right.
And why the hell did that happen? And that moment to sit down and say, oh yeah, now what he said to me or what happened, or I'm worried about the next thing. All right, I know how to process that, right? I know what to do with that, but not if I don't know it's there. So that's an important part of my day.
I think it's important, it's crucial, and it's one of those things that admittedly I haven't done that. I think a lot of people maybe skip that. We just sort of get into maybe part 2 of like, I think most of us have a to-do list of things to do. Number 1 of you, right? I think we've gotten to that part, but I don't know that we're necessarily breaking it down and filtering to our top 3 things of the day, and then even the daily affirmations. And I just find that to be so fascinating. I think in the world that you live in, and where you work, you have to do that in order to be successful. I mean, there's so many people that are looking to you as the title and as the man to say, what next, right? I mean, you have to be able to parse it out and understand the priorities of the business, the priorities of the people, and focus on that. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in the weeds of everything else.
Yeah. And worse, make everybody else get lost in the weeds, right? That I can't let that many people down.
Yeah.
I've got to find that way to stay focused and have a message that sticks to the core.
Yeah.
You know?
So when we get to, like, I call it journal 2. Now I'm naming your journals. And that's where your daily priorities, right? Your top 3.
Yeah.
It could be top 5, like you said, depends on the day. You write them down, and this is what we're focusing on. This is our priority. But you had mentioned not every single time do we get those done.
Oh gosh.
Every single day, right?
No.
It's maybe it falls over from Tuesday to Wednesday or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But the fact that you wrote them down and they're there, it's now a living, breathing document. If we didn't get to it, it now becomes a priority for the next day or the next week or anything else like that, right? Is that kind of how that works?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's there are too many days when that planner lies open on my desk and it just closes back up and gets put back in the bag.
I had a plan, and now my plan is to
That's right.
deal with this other thing. Yeah.
No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
That's right. I think it's easy to do, right? Like, I need a break, and then I got all these other things. I mean, there's all these raging fires.
Always.
That I could probably put that one out and just leave this, and all of a sudden this isn't done, and now you're closer to it. Yeah. Okay.
There's that whole urgent versus important, Matt, balance.
Urgent versus important. I like that. One of the things you'd mentioned is leaving time or blocking out time to have conversations and stay connected to your team and stay connected to the industry, stay connected every which way you can. How does that work? I mean, is it something where you schedule an appointment with somebody and say, look, we want to sit down and just reconnect? Or is it getting up from the desk and walking down the hall and talking to whoever it is you can talk to? Is it a combination of both, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's definitely both. You got to block the time. Like, especially at the pace that we're moving, I need to make sure that, the COO and I have time. Now, we have more of a daily cadence, right? But for people on my team that I wouldn't bump into, I need to make sure I'm blocking an hour for them. Need to make sure they know they have access to me when they need it. Now, ad hoc, of course, they can call me, but having that time set aside is I've found to be just an easier cadence for all of us to maintain. But that getting up and walking around, that grabbing people, it's I think equally powerful when you're able to create that connection on the fly. That's why I like being in the office.
Yeah.
I know that, in this day and age, you got to have some amount of flexibility. Otherwise, you don't get to retain the best people. But I'm still in the office guy. I like that.
It's that beehive, right? That energy
100%.
and ideas start forming and creating, and all of a sudden a kernel of an idea becomes a full thing of popcorn. I agree with you. I mean, being around people in our industry in particular allows for the innovation, allows for the creativity, allows for the business to continue to grow and move forward.
Yeah.
You need that.
Yeah. The learning and information sharing, no better way. So
talk to me about your development now that you're in this role, because we talk a lot about in this industry, development, career path, getting to where you want to be. If you want to be CEO, you got to learn these different things. Now you're in that seat.
Yeah.
How do you maintain your development? How do you continue to grow from here?
Yeah, I don't have to do that anymore. I'm all done with that. No, I a couple of things that I do that have been beneficial. I've always been a reader, so that's something that I still lean into pretty heavy. I have a pretty varied reading approach. I try not to stay too focused on industry or functionally specific stuff. I've been reading about AI. I'm reading about, sort of the evolution of society, reading about, finished one on the 5 love languages in the workplace. So it just
interesting.
Whatever kind of catches my interest, I'll dig in a little bit. Got to sprinkle a little fiction in there to keep the mind flexible, but
cleanse the palate a little bit of the brain.
Bit. That's right.
Have a little fun in there.
That's right.
You mentioned AI, and you mentioned Gemini in terms of helping you write. Now, how are you using that, or how do you see that evolving?
Oh, I think it's the real deal.
Yeah,
I think it's the real deal. Moore's law is too consistent for it not to result in something meaningful. I think that the winners are the ones who can do something with it tangibly. I mean, I love Copilot and Gemini. It's fun. It helped me plan my vacation. But at the end of the day, if you think about work in business, you've got to actually do something that makes life better. And for me, given the importance of relationships and how this industry really works on the ground, it's about empowering people. It's about finding the tools and building tools that help people. I like to call it the Iron Man suit. All right. I want our team to be able to throw on their suit. I want somebody in the suit.
Yeah.
I don't want this thing flying around unsupervised, right? But the idea that we can make you smarter, faster, stronger, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be impactful. But early days.
You're still kind of tinkering or figuring it out.
Yeah, but it's moving fast.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I mean, yeah, the scalability of it is insane. But
It's insane.
I mean, I'm tinkering. Maybe it's just a little view it to be. I'm starting to try to figure out how this is going to help me and do all these other things.
Yeah.
Speaking of help, I didn't ask you this question in our prep call for this, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Because if you listen to part one, the story of, hey, I want to be CEO one day of a certain company, and they kind of said, no, we don't see you in that. You're arrogant. Don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And I've joked that this is the John Wick revenge arc. Your whole career has been, well, I will show you. I will get my revenge. And you've had your revenge. You're now the CEO. You've talked a lot about the different lessons and different ways to manage time and information flow and the process that you have. Lots of good stuff here. So I'm going to ask you the question: if I'm a young person and I've found this podcast and I'm listening to this, what advice would you give somebody who's sort of in your shoes? Maybe they're in their early 20s, maybe they're younger, maybe they're a little older, and they say, I want to be the king. I want to have the corner office. What would you tell them?
Don't let them tell you no. I mean, that's absolutely the fact. I think all the fundamentals are still true, right? You gotta not doubt yourself as you're going through it, but it is about hard work. It is about taking risks, right? Luck is the mix of hard work and opportunity, right? That was absolutely true in my life and in my career. I worked hard. I went back to school. I got my MBA. I was always reading. I was always trying to find that way to make it a little better. At work, at home, failed a lot, had a lot of stumbles. Comes with the territory. If you fail, don't stop, right? If you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
But that idea of the fundamentals and sticking with it, huge. In this day and age, I would say learn how to use AI, man. Make it your friend. That's it. Each generation finds itself in a different era of challenge.
Yep.
Right. I got to be part of Y2K. Yay. It turned out to be nothing. I don't think AI is going to be nothing, right? The internet wasn't nothing.
Right.
So lean into the world that you live in, learn as much as you can, and don't be afraid, right? Solve the problem. That was probably this thing that I did that I'm most proud of. There was a problem. It wasn't about, why I couldn't do it or why it was hard. Well, sometimes it was why it was hard, but getting to the other side of it was what mattered. And that's, I think, what helped me. I think that's what I look for in people around me is, identifying the problem is great. Complaining about the problem doesn't do anybody any good. It makes us all miserable.
Yeah.
It's solving the problem. And candidly, it's the fun part, right? Once you start getting some wins, man, solving problems is a blast.
Just the tailwind when that starts happening, and it's like a cheat code. You start to unlock that process work. Do it again.
Absolutely.
Do it again.
Yeah.
So, well, Peter Jackson, CEO of Builders FirstSource, thank you for being here. Not only is he the CEO of Builders FirstSource, he was the hot dog selling champion in the greater New England area, 1986 to 1987. Peter, thank you for being here on Strong Conversations. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you soon. We got more content coming soon. Awesome.